Welcome to episode 7 of the Overwatch League offseason recap. It was a very busy week, so there is a ton to cover. In particular, there were a lot of drops compared to last week's video, so sadly that means there's going to be a lot of dread. But even so, I'm dying to get right into this thing, so let's get started. And move number 1 that we have to go over that I sadly just missed out on in the previous episode is the Paris Eternal trading XZI over to the Dallas Fuel. While it certainly did always feel like a possibility that he might be joining his former Paris teammates and coaches, I wasn't quite sure if it was going to happen. If he was joining the Fuel, I suspected that it would be official right around the same time of Sparkle and Hanbin. Plus, Dallas has already spent so much money this offseason. I wasn't quite sure if they had enough left in their budget and if it would be enough for XZI in general. But here they are proving me wrong on both fronts. I honestly can't complain. Polishing off their DPS rotation with a hit scan extraordinaire was the final thing I was really looking for the Fuel to accomplish this offseason, and they went ahead and did it. It was the only glaring hole on that roster, really. It's a wonderful addition. What else is there to say? You keep the Element Mystic and Paris Eternal synergy going, and you get one of the best hit scan options on the market. Talk about killing two birds with one stone. The only real concern I can think of is what they're going to do if a double hit scan meta presents itself. If the Fuel are supposedly done making roster moves for the foreseeable future, then how will they handle that? XZI can play the snipers, but who's going to play the Tracer? Sparkle? Doha? I mean, they're both okay at that character, but nothing to write home about. I fear they could be a little lackluster in this type of meta, but maybe they have a way to compensate for that. If they were to figure it out, then they'll be fine, because that's the only real noticeable issue I see right now, because they're stacked. They spent so much money, and it's looking like money well spent. While I'm on the topic of former Paris players, let's talk about the fact that the Eternal officially said goodbye to Soon, Benbest, and Nico. The heartbreak for Paris fans continues this offseason, and I know that a lot of French fans in particular are going to be super sad. Paris are sadly in a bad situation financially though. They're supposedly looking to only sign players who are willing to accept close to the league minimum, if not the league minimum itself. For a while, the three Frenchmen were actually attempting to renegotiate, but it's clear that money that they were getting offered just wasn't good enough. They all made contributions in their own way, and they all know they're worth more than the league minimum. I'm not sure about Nico because he was mostly a control specialist after Sparkle took over, but Soon and Benbest could definitely find a new home somewhere. Maybe they could stick to an EU environment and sign with the Spitfire, for example. I hope they all get a chance though in the end, because they deserve it. I really wonder what the new Paris roster is going to look like. I'm curious to see how many recognizable names they get, if any. I'm assuming there could be some guys we've never heard of, kind of like with Season 3 London. It might be a rough season for Paris fans. I hope I'm wrong about this, but the situation does not look promising. While I'm on the topic of dread, we simply have to mention the NYXL, who said goodbye to 3 of their OG Season 1 players, that being Bebe, Libero, and Anamo. The loyal New York fans are going to be super sad, and understandably so. Saying goodbye to people you're familiar with is never ever easy, especially when they're as likable and as reliable as these 3. Bebe was their team leader and a clutch tracer god. Libero was always their flex king, who played whatever the team needed without ever complaining. He's a damn good player, and it's a shame he got utilized so little this year. As for Anamo, he was a bit passive, yes, but the consistency has always been there. Some people don't give him the credit he deserves, if I'm going to be completely honest, but alas, New York fans need to understand that it's time to move on. It's been 3 years and they keep falling short. When you have title aspirations, that's when you need to evaluate your situation. Losing out on 3 really likable players sucks, but it's necessary. The mono trade was a hint that this was coming, and I honestly don't mind it. Get some new talent in there and move on from the past. The NYXL could still be good. Do not give up hope, NYXL fans. I promise you it's not going to be like the Paris or Vancouver situation. When it comes to Bebe, Libero, and Anamo individually, I have confidence that all of them have a good chance of finding a new team. I'm pretty sure they all wish to play still, and if that's the case, they all bring certain values to the table. With SBB, he brings invaluable leadership to any team, and he still is not a bad player by any means. But if he were to have trouble finding a new team as a player, I could still maybe see him finding success as a coach because he's a great mentor figure. For Libero, I'm pretty high on him personally, so I would say that any team in need of a flex DPS is pretty much fair game. So like Toronto, the Shock, maybe Philly, or even Florida could all be realistic landing places because Libero is a Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything. He gives you that instant versatility. He's a star that could be very valuable for any roster, so somebody please pick this man up. As for Anamo, the main support market is a little tight, but it also happens to be rather dry, so the teams in need of a main support are certainly going to give him a tryout. Maybe he goes to Washington, or maybe Toronto, or what about Florida, or what about Seoul? If they don't bring back Toby or Slime, then maybe Anamo's the play. Good luck to all of these former NYXL players. It's going to be weird not seeing them represent New York. But wait, NYXL fans, I have some more news for you, and this time it's good news, because one of your OG boys is sticking around. Your MVP JJonak has re-signed with the team. I heard he was trialing with some other teams, so I'm pleasantly surprised about this outcome. It ensures the NYXL fans that they at least have a sense of direction currently. They clearly want to build a team around JJonak right now. Contrary to what a lot of fans think of him, I personally believe JJonak had a pretty down year in Season 3. He acted like it was Season 1 still with how aggressive he was playing. And sadly, the team was very divided on how they wanted to play, so this did cause some major issues. However, now that everybody is gone, they could truly build this team around JJonak. They can fit pieces in that truly complement his style, and I think there's reason to feel optimistic because of that. Rebuild the team in a way that suits him and his needs. It might do them some good. Next is the Washington Justice, who made quite a few announcements actually. First up is the addition of Bebe. This is an interesting pickup because most people would argue there were better players available on the market. However, Bebe has never been an awful player, so it could be worse, I guess. My issue is that he showed little to no progression compared to last year. Bebe is coming into his 3rd year, and most people only see him as a B-tier player at best. If you want my honest opinion, I don't really consider this to be an upgrade or a downgrade compared to Aimgod. But you know, sometimes a change of scenery can benefit a player so much. Look at Decay, look at Fleta even. They put up MVP level seasons this year after leaving their original team. While I doubt Bebe would ever reach that kind of level, who's to say that it can't go from like a B tier to an A tier flex support, let's say. An important thing to note is that he has been coached under Coach Supreme before though. They were together on XX Gaming back in the day, so this might be a really good fit. Rounding out their support line, they also signed Closer. Just going by name, it does feel like a bit of a head scratcher. Closer had a pretty mediocre year on Dallas in 2020. He wasn't terrible, but definitely not good either. I mean, he got benched mid-season after all. Strictly looking at it from that point of view, yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense. However, staying optimistic is definitely the play. Looking strictly at the past can come back to bite you, and I learned that the hard way with players like Benbest last year. Closer will be playing on a much better team than Season 3 Dallas. He's got better resources. Another thing worth noting is that he and Bebe both killed it in their tryouts apparently. They left a really good impression. The Scrim Bucks are strong with them. While I don't really plan to buy into them immediately, I have reason to believe they could be in for comeback seasons. After what happened with the Valiant last year and their Scrim Buck rumors, I feel more inclined to invest in these supposed Scrim Bucks. Moving onward, the Justice did post a little bit of a departure list as they moved away from Aimgod, JJanu, and Stitch. With the Jerry move in mind, the Stitch thing is not all that surprising. As I said in the previous video, Jerry's ceiling has yet to be determined. He has more potential than Stitch. Aimgod also isn't the biggest deal in the world because he kind of had an average year, plus they already signed Bebe. And that leads me to JJanu. Now if this was 1 year earlier, I would be yelling at the Justice asking them what the heck they're doing, but Season 3 JJanu really wasn't that good. Don't get me wrong, he's not a bad player by any means, but he's really not that versatile when you think about it. He's an excellent Diva and Roadhog player, yes, but his Sigma and Zarya do leave a lot to be desired. I really do think the Justice could do better because Fury is right there for the taking, and it would be a great fit in my opinion. I really doubt they'd ditch JJanu that easily if they did not have a good replacement on deck. I get the feeling Justice fans are going to forget about JJanu real quick, but the question is, what's going to happen to these former Justice players? Well, JJanu is the only one of the bunch I have absolute confidence in to find a new home because there's too many teams who still need an off-tank, and he's far too talented to not be in the league even if he's not the most flexible. Aimgod and Stitch though, yeah, I'm not too sure. Stitch only really stood out during the playoffs for the most part, and if I'm going to be honest, this actually might be the end of his career. I don't know if anybody else gives him a chance at this point. And the thing with Aimgod is flex support is a very stacked position. He might play well on a better team, but there's so many amazing flex support prospects out there. It is easily one of the most stacked positions to find new players out of. If Aimgod does find a new team, there's a chance he is not the full-time starter. In all likelihood, he ends up joining a roster as either a veteran or somebody who comes in for double flex support metas. Taking a break from some of the grim stuff, the Shanghai Dragons surprisingly picked up Erster. I'm not gonna lie, when this news first dropped, I was in complete and utter confusion. Shanghai have the best flex DPS in the Overwatch League in Fleta already, and he literally can play anything Erster can. And most would argue he can play everything better for that matter. I guess Erster could have the better Mei, but that's about all I can come up with. Could it be a situational type of substitution, or do the Dragons have something else in mind? I can't wrap my head around it. On paper, it's just, I don't know, so weird. But you know what? Coach Moon is known for making head-scratching decisions, so maybe I shouldn't question it. He could still have a use. But still, there definitely were better options, I feel like. And another thing, what made Erster join the Dragons to begin with? Did he want to be part of like a winning culture or something? Or was it something else? I really don't know about the rest of you, but I'm extremely excited to find this out potentially. Some other older news that I barely missed out on last week is the Guangzhou Charge making yet another addition at DPS. This time they signed the flex DPS player out of Element Mystic known as Choisehwan. Sorry if I botched that pronunciation, by the way. I have no idea how to say it. But based on what I know, he's a fairly explosive player, and I've even heard some people call him a mini Sparkle. He's that kind of player, but maybe not with the same type of potential. Regardless, his projectile characters are pretty solid overall. Given that they already have Eileen, I'm not really sure how much we see him. With good coaching though, he might develop into a quality player. With synergy purposes in mind, he might even be better for communication. And for all I know, maybe Eileen is just off the charge altogether in a trade or something, but it has not been announced yet. If Eileen is not going anywhere though, the charge could have made this signing with the future in mind, I'm assuming. Either way, I kind of like it. The charge have made some good signings so far, but nothing that makes me think they'll be at the level they were last year. I'm not sure if I see a world where they perform that well again. This roster appears to be weaker, but they did upgrade the coaching position, so maybe they can be better. And I mean, the offseason is still young, so more blockbuster moves could be on the way. Next up, we have the Hangzhou Spark, who signed 5, yes, count them, 5 new players, and first up will be Bernar. Despite playing for a weak team in 2020, Bernar did show the consistency you are looking for out of an off-tank. He was not top tier or anything, but he could legitimately become a top tier off-tank with better teammates and coaching, and both of which he appears to have right now. If they get along well enough, XZI and Bernar could become a pretty sick duo. The Spark also happened to sign 3 rookies to their 2021 roster. There's the Flex Support MCD, the Off-Tank League, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, I apologize in advance, and the main tank Takoyaki. All 3 of them at one point in their careers played for a well-respected team in contenders. MCD comes from Element Mystic, and Takoyaki used to play for them back in the day as well. Then there's League, who I'm pretty excited about, to be honest. Not only was he on the ever so dominant Team CC in Chinese contenders, but now the Spark have a chance to run a purely Chinese tank line, and XZI might really benefit from that because he'll properly be able to coordinate and communicate with somebody who understands him completely. From what I can tell, League is mostly known for his D.Va and Zarya. Looking at MCD, I'm not really too sure what's going to happen with him. He might end up splitting time in the rotation with Coldest, and I only say this because it seems to me like MCD might still have to prove himself worthy of being a full-time starter at the Overwatch League level just by looking at his gameplay. He's been a part of some good teams, but also happened to be stuck on Moira when Element Mystic hit their peak in the Gauntlet, which really doesn't help his value rise all that much, sadly. Now don't get me wrong, this is just a theory, because he still could be really good for all I know, because he did secure a roster spot in the Overwatch League after all, so there's definitely some upside to him. But how good he's going to be seems pretty uncertain. There's no clear way to judge it. As for Takoyaki, XZI is clearly the better player, but there may be situations where they want to run him for all Korean lineup purposes because he may end up synergizing better with Bernar. Or maybe they'll simply develop him for the next year and go from there. One thing worth mentioning about Takoyaki is that he does not turn 18 until mid-April, so he might not be ready to play at the start depending on when the start date of the 2021 season is. Wrapping up a very busy week for the Spark, they decided to sign Seominsoo. All in all, it's a very interesting pickup. The Spark only had 3 DPS players on their roster, so this does kind of help round out that rotation of theirs. Seominsoo also has potential as a player still. I'm not really sure if we've seen his ceiling just yet. We've seen so little of him on DPS, I feel like. The only thing that comes to mind with him, for me at least, is Zarya and Reaper. Here's his chance to prove he has a reliable hero pool. But even if he proves to not be all that good on other heroes, he still definitely could find a use on this team for Zarya and Reaper metas at the very least. It's been a long time since we've seen Seominsoo in action, and I look forward to seeing what he brings to the table. All in all, I would say there's reason to be optimistic if you're a Spark fan. They've been rebuilding the team pretty well so far this offseason, and what I really like is that they have a lot of options available to them. I'm a huge fan of that. They can run multiple different tank lines, they have a bunch of supports available to them, they have multiple DPS players, there's a lot going on there. How about we transition towards the Valiant now? After teasing the fans with eyes emojis for weeks on end, the Valiant announced the signing of the off-tank player Adam out of Australian Contenders. Even if this is the first time you're ever hearing his name, I think it's important to trust in the Valiant on this one. Their scouting is top-notch. They know better than most on how to get maximum value out of their players. If this was last year, I would be freaking out, but I don't believe there's any reason to now. Plus, from what I've seen and heard, Adam is actually like a really good player with a lot of upside. People who keep up with Australian Contenders have told me that he's easily one of the strongest players in that region, if not the number one. I know that Overwatch League is a completely different animal, but there is reason to feel optimistic if you support the Valiant. He's exceptionally good at D.Va and Zarya, not to mention that he's been a part of the last 3 teams to win Australian Contenders. I could see him being a quick and affordable upgrade for McGravy. While they never played together, there is a bit of an Australian Contenders connection with him and Dreamer, so they might get along nicely. Not to mention that him and Coach Unter also already have some experience working together, which might help him significantly right from the start. Adam has some connections going for him. He might make for a fine addition to the Valiant roster. Next up on the signing list is the Toronto Defiant. They announced their support line with the additions of Aztec and Ansoonjae to the team. At the very least, some of you have probably heard of Aztec. He played on WGS Phoenix alongside I'm37 in their recent first place finish in Korean Contenders. Aztec is easily one of the top support prospects across all regions. Toronto fans should feel quite excited about this one. Putting a flex support of this caliber in KDG's hands could be something special. Originally, there was a lot of reason to believe he would sign with Boston because 1, his head coach signed there, but 2, he played with Uprising Academy before going on loan to WGS Phoenix. But then Myungbong decided to commit to Boston, and I had no idea who would win the bidding war. Toronto totally does make sense though. It was probably seen as an appealing destination in Aztec's eyes because he knows that they could build around him there. Then there's Ansoonjae, and I'm assuming that most of you who don't watch Contenders have never heard of him, and to be completely honest, I can't blame you. He's not a super recognizable name. He plays main support, which is easily the most underappreciated position in the game. He played for Element Mystic during the most recent season of Korean Contenders, where he helped the team get a top 4 finish. He's only been around the pro scene since 2019, so he's a bit of a newer prospect. Main support is a fairly dry talent pool this offseason for rookies. I would be lying to you if I said he was on my radar, but at the end of the day, he does come from Element Mystic, and they've always been one of the best teams at developing Overwatch League level talent. If I remember correctly, there's 11 other current former Element Mystic players in the Overwatch League right now, and that gives me reason to believe that this guy could end up being good. And I'm really liking the start that Defiant are off to because of this. If they get more pieces like this to build around with their excellent head coach, then they could be well on their way to being far more competitive than last year. Moving onward, we have the Chengdu Hunters, who made a handful of decisions. For one, Lateyoung and Yveltal have been downgraded to two-way players on their new academy team known as Team Chaser. Given that both of them showed promise in only specific metas but don't really have enough versatility to be consistent starters, this does make a lot of sense. They can still be useful as part of the team, and they can train and hone their skills in Contenders at the same time. It's a win-win for everybody. Also joining the academy team from the main roster is EQO and Lengsa, but unfortunately, these two did not receive two-way contracts. They are going to be full-time members of Team Chaser for the time being. I personally believe both of them could be much better players, so some time in Contenders could really do them some good, and you never know. If they play well enough, maybe they'll get another chance. As a result of all of these moves, it did create some room on the main roster to add in some new pieces, and the Hunters wasted little time with this opportunity. Only 2 days later, they announced the signing of Kaneki and Jimmy. Both of these guys have gone from team to team in Chinese Contenders in 2020, but their effectiveness was always there. Kaneki is a flex DPS who can play a mean Sombra, Tracer, and Echo, and having a second option at this position is great. While Jinmu is a fan favorite, his hero pool is nowhere near perfect, and I think that Kaneki fills the holes in his games pretty well. Jinmu's not the best Sombra player, and having a good Sombra has proven to be crucial in the APAC region with how much that character got played over there. Now the Hunters are going to feel less pressured in those types of metas, which I really do like. The more significant signing of the two, though, has to be Jimmy. He is someone I have heard a lot more about, and fans are excited about him. He's a very talented hitscan player who might complement Leave in a double hitscan meta very nicely. I can see it now. Leave on the Tracer and Jimmy on the Ashe. That could be a lethal combination. But you know what? Jimmy might even prove to be better in single hitscan metas than Leave, because he is dangerous on those sniper heroes. Either way, I like the pickup. Oh, and before I forget, how is it that the Hunters always get these players with amazing names? In Season 2 it was Gary, and now they have Jimmy. I don't know why, but I find it so funny that these players have these typical, like, I don't know, American names, I guess, as their handles. Next thing you know, they'll be signing someone named Larry in Season 5. Capping the Chengdu news in this episode, they rounded out their coaching staff with the additions of Creed and YAOXI as the assistants of RUI. Creed was a coach on the Shanghai Dragons when they won the Stage 3 title in 2019, and he recently did coach the Charge as well. Creed has a rich history of finding success. YAOXI is a bit newer to the coaching scene, but he found immediate success coaching Flag Gaming, who recently took down Team CC to win the most recent season of Chinese Contenders. I'm liking the new Chengdu coaching staff a lot. It might be their best yet. Talking about some re-signings now, the Fusion brought back Poko and EQO for another year. Given that Fury is not coming back, the Poko decision does make a lot of sense. Now, there's a chance the Fusion do sign another off-tank player, but in the result that they don't, it might not be the end of the world, as I think some people might forget that Poko did play quite well before Fury permanently took his place this year. He's a reliable player, and I think keeping him around will keep Carpe happy as well because they are pretty close friends. I understand that some Fusion fans might feel robbed, but Poko might play well under 9K system, and like I already said, the Fusion might not be done addressing this position, so if you're not satisfied just yet, there still is hope. The EQO decision though, that's a bit more interesting. Yeah, he's not a bad flex DPS, and he did provide some valuable minutes off the bench during the early Echo meta and in the Summer Showdown, but I would be upset if he's the full-time starter again moving forward. There are some pretty darn good players at this position in the open market currently, so it would be a shame if Philly could not capitalize on that. The Carpe EQO duo is a classic, but it's not really championship caliber. It's my hope that Philly most likely got EQO to fill up a roster spot on a cheap deal where he only makes appearances in specific metas. It's pretty clear by bringing back Poko and EQO and announcing they have Funny Astro again for the next year that Philly do want to keep their team mixed because they do believe that they could find success with it. After all, the Shock have already found success with it 2 times. I'm hoping the Fusion are not quite done yet though, because at their current level, I don't think they're good enough to compete for a championship again. They need to add a few more pieces. Next up is the Seoul Dynasty, who said their goodbyes to Illicit, Michelle, Badoshin, and Slime. Badoshin was the only one of these 4 who got meaningful playtime in 2020, and Seoul have a better option in creative now anyway, so that makes all of these guys expendable. Illicit and Michelle in particular were pretty expected drops. While Illicit certainly does have potential, Seoul were never really able to bring it to the surface. Plus, they have Prophet anyway, so they really don't need him. Because he is still widely unproven, his future as a pro is uncertain. If he comes back to the league, it probably won't be until like a year later after he does some serious grinding. With Michelle, Seoul did not like him for whatever reason this year. They almost never played him even though they desperately needed help at off-tank during non-Sigma metas. Given those circumstances, it was kind of obvious that he would not be on the team for much longer. Michelle might get another chance somewhere else though, because he was pretty good during Season 2, so he might still have something left in the tank. With Slime leaving, you'd have to assume he either found a new team or Seoul already have somebody else in mind for main support, like bringing back Toby, let's say. I expect Slime to be announced somewhere else like really soon because he's a very talented player. He brings amazing aggression to the table on Lucio and Brig. His other heroes could use some work, but that doesn't really mean he can't improve or anything like that. And there's also a chance that whatever team gets him gets another support to cover up his weaknesses. Lastly, we have Badoshin. He's an interesting case. He was kind of average on Seoul, and flex support is a very competitive position. He might have trouble finding a new team because people will feel more inclined to sign somebody whose potential is undecided compared to him. However, Badoshin does have some redeeming qualities because he has proven to be a good shot caller and he is a veteran. It's hard to say what his future holds though, so good luck Badoshin. And last, but certainly not least, the Spitfire continued their roster purge by announcing that Sanguinar is off the team alongside Bernar, who was on the Spark as discussed earlier. Given that Bernar already has a new team, that might signal that Sanguinar is announced somewhere else really soon. I know he's currently LFT, but that could change very fast. You'd have to assume that Glister and Fuse will also be on their way out soon. It's all a matter of finding the highest bidder, I suppose. Once London can maximize their profit and get the deals done, they'll be gone soon enough. London fans may need to hang on just a bit longer before seeing their new roster get revealed. I suspect they're going to take their time with trials and that no new players will be announced until the old ones are all gone. Stay patient, friends. And with that being said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Overwatch League offseason recap. So what do you think of XZ joining the Fuel as well as the rest of this crazy week? Let me know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it a lot if you could give it a like and subscribe if you're new. You can also hear all my other thoughts on the offseason through the playlist in the description. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.